Now you will hear some talks and discussions about academic topics. You will hear each talk or discussion only one time. Questions 26 through 29. Listen to a teacher talking in a social studies class.
There is an old saying that clothes make the man. In other words, success depends on how well one dresses. This may be true today, but for much of history, it was actually the wig that made the man. In ancient Egypt, the wig was a symbol of success. The people wore wigs to show how rich and important they were. Wigs were so dear to ancient Egyptians that they were buried with their wigs on. The Romans also wore wigs to make themselves look more attractive. They wore wigs in many styles. Of course, some wealthy Romans owned a lot of wigs. One Roman empress, Faustina the Elder, was said to own over 300 wigs. Wigs were also very popular in Europe, beginning in the 17th century. Europeans thought that wigs were more beautiful and easier to take care of than real hair. But wigs cost a lot of money, so only the wealthy wore them in Europe. In general, all important men and women wore a wig in public. This did not change until the 19th century.
Now answer the questions. Number 26. Why is the teacher discussing wigs? Number 27. What is one reason that Egyptians wore wigs? Number 28. Why does the teacher mention the Roman Empress Faustina the Elder? Number 29. Why were wigs only worn by the wealthy in Europe? Questions 30 through 33. Listen to a discussion in a biology class.
The flying fish does not fly. It actually glides. Can anyone tell us the difference?
Birds fly when they move their wings. They glide when they just hold their wings out and don't move them.
Exactly. A flying fish is able to glide through the air with the help of its wings. It also swims very fast, about 60 kilometers per hour. The fish pushes itself into the air with its tail. Then, it spreads its wings and glides. But it doesn't move its wings, so it can only glide for about 200 meters. When it nears the water's surface, it hits the water with its tail and lifts itself again for another 200 meters, and so on.
So it bounces off the water like a flat rock? You know, like when you throw a rock and it bounces off the water 2 or 3 times?
That's right. The fish uses its tail to keep bouncing. This helps them stay in the air longer. There are a few other animals that also glide but don't fly. Can anyone think of one?
Now answer the questions. Number 30. What is the class mainly discussing? Number 31. Why does the boy mention birds? Number 32. According to the teacher, how does the flying fish push itself into the air? Number 33. What will the teacher probably discuss next? Questions 34 through 37. Listen to a teacher talking in an environmental science class.
In America, we are able to speak freely about our government, and we can protest things our government does. Because of this, there are many protest groups in the U.S. One such group is Greenpeace. Let's talk about how Greenpeace got started. In the 1960s, our government was testing nuclear bombs on one of Alaska's islands. But people were worried that the tests might cause an earthquake. As a result, they started protesting. And before long, the protest became popular. In 1970, famous musicians even gave a concert in Vancouver, Canada, to support the protest. Protesters used the money from the concert to rent a boat because they planned to travel to Alaska and protest. They named that boat Greenpeace. The government reacted by stopping the boat, Greenpeace, from getting to Alaska. But the protests back home eventually put an end to the nuclear testing anyway. After that, the protesters started an organization and called it Greenpeace. Today, Greenpeace is probably best known for protesting human activities that damage the environment, especially global warming.
Now answer the questions. Number 34. What is the talk mainly about? Number 35. Why did people protest against nuclear bomb testing by the government? Number 36. Why does the teacher mention a concert in Vancouver, Canada? Number 37. What was the government's reaction to Greenpeace? Questions 38 through 42. Listen to a discussion in a science class.
To understand how a pearl is formed, we first have to talk about oysters. What do you know about oysters?
They live inside shells.
Okay, inside the shell, oysters have a number of organs, such as a stomach and a heart. The organ I want you to remember, though, is the mantle. The mantle is what makes the pearls inside oysters. But not all oysters have pearls inside of them.
Why don't all oysters have pearls in them?
That's a good question. Let me come back to that. First, let's talk about how pearls are formed. It all starts when a foreign object enters the oyster, such as a small stone. The mantle protects itself by covering the stone with a sticky liquid called nacre. And it keeps doing this until the thick layers of nacre finally form a pearl. But this natural process doesn't happen very often because something like a stone has to get inside the oyster's shell first.
So that's why not every oyster has a pearl in it.
That's right. And that's also why pearls cost so much.
Now answer the questions. Number 38. What is the discussion mainly about? Number 39. Why does the teacher mention the oyster's heart? Number 40. What must happen before a pearl forms in an oyster? Number 41. What can be inferred about nacre? Number 42. Why do all oysters not have pearls in them?